I could tell you a million stories. I'm going to choose one and tell you how speech and debate influenced that moment in my life. But before I do that, I need to set the stage. Remember how I told you guys I failed the LSAT not once, but twice? That completely derailed my dream of becoming a lawyer. So after college, I ended up selling something called a fax machine, door to door, for 7 years. I did 100% cold calling. I would walk in and out of businesses all day, every day, unannounced. They did not ask me to be there to try to sell them something they did not ask for. Every door I walked through had the no soliciting sign. I would take a very deep breath, walk through the door, and try to sell a fax machine to them. I got business cards ripped up in my face about once a week, and I got escorted out of buildings all the time. It was brutal. And one day, after 7 years of selling fax machines door to door, I pulled off the side of the road and I started to cry. And I remember thinking, I'm in the wrong movie. Call the director, call the producer, cut. This is not my life. I decided I was going to star in a new movie. So I went home that night and wrote in my journal, I am going to invent a product that I can sell to millions of people that will make them feel good. And 2 years later, I cut the feet out of my own control top pantyhose to solve my own undergarment issues so I could wear white pants to a party. And from that moment, I decided I'm going to bet on myself. And I want to tell you a little bit about betting on yourself. I had $5,000 set aside in savings, no industry contacts. I had never made a product before in my life. But I went ahead and worked at night and on the weekends for 2 years to create this product. And then, when I had my prototype in my hand, I called the Neiman Marcus buyer, the most prestigious retailer in the United States. I called, and this is how speech and debate helped this moment in my life. When I called her, I used zero doubtful language. I called her on the phone. She didn't know who I was. And instead of saying, hi, I'm Sarah, I think I created something that might make a big difference in what you guys do and what you're selling, I called her up and I said, I'm Sarah Blakely. I've invented a product that's going to change the way millions of women get dressed around the world, and it's also going to help you sell more clothing, and especially your couture gowns. Can I have 15 minutes of your time? And she gave me those 15 minutes, which she later admitted was very unusual. She did not ever take cold calls and just set up meetings. And when I asked her why, she said there was just something about your confidence on the phone that made me want to take the meeting. And I remember thinking, thank you, speech and debate. So I got on a plane. So I got on a plane and I flew to Dallas. I was terrified, shaking. I had a color copy of my packaging that I had created at Kinko's. I had my prototype in a Ziploc bag from my kitchen, and I had my lucky red backpack from college that was red and covered in dirt and stains. But I brought it with me because it was lucky. And I walked through the doors of Neiman Marcus. I pressed floor 8. I went up 8 floors, the doors open, and it was the most pristine, stunning offices I'd ever seen in my life. And I walked in and got to meet with the buyer. This was such a big moment for me. It was make or break. And as soon as I started talking to her, I knew this was my moment to pitch her. In the middle of pitching her, I could tell I was losing her. I could tell she wasn't going to buy it. And the reason I could tell that was because I knew how to read her nonverbals from speech and debate. You all know what it feels like when you're losing a judge. You can tell. And what do you do when you start telling that you're losing your audience or a judge? You pivot. So I pivoted, and in the middle of that meeting, I said, you know what, actually, Diane, would you come with me to the bathroom? So she looked at me, it was a weird moment, and she said, excuse me? And I said, yeah, I know this is kind of weird, but will you just come with me to the bathroom because I want to show you in person what my product can do. And she agreed, and we walked down the hallway. I went into the stall in the bathroom, put on my Spanx under my white pants, came out, showed her with and without the product. And she looked at me and she goes, I'm starting to get it. And then came the objections. But guess what? I was super prepared for the objections because of speech and debate. I had already anticipated every single objection she was going to give me, and I already had the answer. So she looked at me. Yes. So she looked at me and she said, yeah, that's nice, but we also have girdles. And I go, yes, I understand that, but girdles are hot and thick and uncomfortable, and they leave a line or bulge on your thigh where the girdle ends, and that doesn't solve the problem for women under our slacks and gowns. She kind of nodded. And she goes, well, we also just sell traditional underwear that women could wear to solve the problem. I said, well, underwear leaves panty lines, and women don't always want to see a visible panty line under their clothes. So then she said, yeah, I know, so we sell thongs. And then I said, well, that just put underwear exactly where we had been trying to get it out of. And she said, I get it. I'm going to place an order, and I'm going to put you in 7 stores. To get that order at that moment in life was such a big deal. No one had ever heard of Sarah Blakely. No one had ever heard of Spanx. And I got a chance to be on the shelf between brands like Donna Karan, Calvin Klein, Gucci, Prada, and then there was my product that I had a chance to get sold in this store. So the first thing I did is I called everyone I knew in those 7 cities. And it went like this. Hey, it's Sarah. Remember me from 4th grade? Yeah, I know it's been a while. Hey, listen, can you go into the store, the Neiman's in your town, and buy something called Spanx, and I'll write you a check? I literally paid all of the women and my friends that I knew in those 7 cities to go buy Spanx. And you'll never guess what happened. The Neiman's buyer called me, and she goes, Sarah, this is really remarkable, but we are selling out. I was like, no, really? But just as I was running out of friends and money, Oprah called and chose Spanx as her favorite product of the year. I also use speech and debate a lot as an inventor. I started another company called Sneaks, and I wanted to invent a comfortable high heel for women. And as an inventor, I start with objections and women's pain points. I'm always focused on what are the biggest objections that I can solve. So with Sneaks, which I'm wearing right here, ta-da, comfortable high heel, the first pain point that I wanted to solve for was the toe box. The toe of most high heels is way too narrow, and it squeezes our toes and hurts our feet. Yep. The second thing I wanted to do was I wanted to take the pressure off the ball of the foot, which is another huge objection and pain that women have had. For centuries, high heels have been made the exact same way. 80% of the weight is on the ball of our foot, and 20% is on the heel. So it creates a lot of pain. I changed the weight distribution inside of the high heel, so when you're standing, it feels more 50-50, and you sit back more on your heel, alleviating the pressure on the ball of your foot. And the third thing I did was I gave whole foot support. I didn't want the foot to be suspended at all, so I created an entire support system for the foot. So I'm always obsessing objections. That's what I love to do. That's how for 21 years of owning Spanx and being the product creator, I kept iterating and making things better and better. Most people avoid the objections. I wanted to know only the objections. What don't you like about it? How could it be better? What could we improve? And I owe that to speech and debate.